We like to believe we are rational beings. That when we stand at life's crossroads, faced with a decision that could alter the course of our existence, we weigh our options with the cold, calculated precision of a judge delivering a verdict. We imagine ourselves pulling out a mental scale, placing fear on one side and desire on the other, and then calmly choosing the path that leads to the greater good. But if you have ever actually stood at that crossroads, really stood there, with wind in your face and the ground solid beneath your feet, you know this image is a lie. There is nothing calm about it. There is nothing calculated about the way your stomach drops when you realize that choosing one life means you have to kill the other. This is the moment that defines us, not the choices themselves, but the agonizing, gut-wrenching paralysis that precedes them. And if you have ever found yourself frozen, unable to move, unable to commit to a path even when every logical part of your brain screams at you to just pick one, you know the shame that comes with it. It feels like weakness, a flaw in your character. You watch others, friends, colleagues, even characters in movies, make leaps of faith that would shatter you, and you wonder, why can't I just jump? You think the answer is fear, or laziness, or a lack of ambition. But the truth is far darker, and it lives much deeper than surface-level anxieties of failure or success. To understand why we cannot make the hard choice, we have to sit in the darkness of our own minds for a moment and look at the architecture of who we believe ourselves to be. Imagine for a second that your identity is not a single, solid thing but a vast house. You live in this house your entire life. You know every creak in the floorboards, every draft from the windows, the way light hits the kitchen table at noon. This house is built from your memories, your beliefs, your traumas, and your victories. It is familiar. It is safe. Even if the roof leaks and the walls are thin, it is yours. And in the center, in the quietest room, sits the throne of your identity, the core belief you hold about yourself. It might be I am a survivor. Or I am a provider. Or perhaps I am an artist. Or even I am someone who plays it safe. This core belief is the king or queen of your internal world. Every decision, every relationship, every job, it all must bow to that king. Now, a hard choice arrives. It doesn't knock politely at the front door. It kicks it in. This choice, to leave the marriage, quit the secure job, move to the unknown city, start the business, finally tell the truth, carries with it a new identity. It carries a blueprint for a different house. In this new house, the windows are in different places. Light falls on unfamiliar furniture. The floorboards creak in a rhythm you don't recognize. And this new house has a different king on the throne. If the old king was the provider, the new king might be the dreamer. If the old king was the loyal spouse, the new king might be the free individual. And this is where the terror sets in. Because you realize, with chilling clarity, that you cannot serve two kings. You cannot live in two houses at once. The reason you can't make the hard choice is not because you are weak. It is because making the choice feels like murder. It feels like walking into the throne room of your own soul and executing the ruler who kept you safe for so long. And who wants to be that assassin? Who wants to look at the part of themselves that got them through hard times, the cautious part, the loyal part, the humble part, and drive a knife into its heart? We stall, procrastinate, rationalize, develop psychosomatic back pain, start fights with our partners, anything to avoid walking into that throne room. We think we are afraid of the unknown. But we are not. We are afraid of the death we must commit to reach it. Think about the last time you faced a choice that truly paralyzed you. It wasn't about what to have for dinner. It was about something that touched the core of your being. Maybe it was ending a long-term relationship. On paper, it was the right move. You were unhappy. They were unhappy. Love had curdled into a comfortable, painful routine. But you couldn't pull the trigger. Why? Because for years, your identity had been wrapped up in being the partner. You were the other half of a whole. To leave was not just to break up with them, it was to break up with the person you were when you were with them. It was to orphan the version of yourself who made breakfast for two, who had inside jokes, who planned a shared future. That version of you would have to die. And who has the stomach for that kind of violence against their own history? Or perhaps the choice was professional. You have a job that pays the bills. It's dull, it saps your spirit, but it's secure. And you have a dream. A wild, passionate dream to do something that truly matters to you. But the dream doesn't pay the bills. Not yet. Walking away from security is not just a career change. It is an assassination of the responsible you. The you your parents can be proud of. The you who can look at a bank statement and feel safe. To chase the dream, you have to kill that responsible guardian. You have to stand over its body and say, I choose the starving artist over you. That is not a business decision. That is psychological civil war. This is the dark reason. It is the battle between the person you are and the person you are becoming. And the person you are will fight to the death. They will use every weapon in their arsenal. They will whisper to you in the middle of the night, remember that time you tried something new and it failed? They will show you memories of past pains, edited like a propaganda film to make the future look like a minefield. They will convince you that staying still is safety, even when staying still is slowly poisoning you. Because for the current self, staying still is life. Change is extinction. We look at those who have made the leap, the entrepreneurs, the artists, the ones who left toxic relationships and found love, the ones who moved to new countries and built lives, and we see their courage. We see the moment they jumped. We don't see the funeral they held for their old self the night before. We don't see them standing alone in the dark, saying goodbye to a version of themselves that had to die so they could live. That moment of goodbye is the hardest thing a human being can ever do. It is harder than failure itself. Because failure means you tried and lost. But killing your old self means you chose to lose what you were, voluntarily. You set fire to the bridge behind you, not knowing if the bridge ahead actually exists. And so we remain. We remain in the job we hate, because at least we know who we are there. We remain in the relationship that hollows us out, because at least we have a reflection in someone else's eyes. We remain in the city that makes us small, because the streets are familiar. We trade the terrifying prospect of becoming someone new for the suffocating comfort of staying someone old. And we call it being practical. We call it cautious. We call it responsible. But deep down, in that quiet room of the house, we know the truth, we are not being responsible. We are being custodians of a ghost. We are guarding a throne that is slowly killing us, simply because we are too afraid to be the one who takes the crown. But what if we looked at it differently? What if the assassination is not a tragedy, but a mercy? What if the king on the throne is not a beloved ruler, but a tyrant? A tyrant who has kept you locked in the same room for years, convincing you the world outside the castle walls is a wasteland, when in fact it is a garden. The hard choice is not just an act of violence, it is an act of liberation. It is a revolution of one. And every revolution requires a sacrifice. The old regime must fall. The question then becomes not how do I make the choice, but rather which version of me am I willing to grieve, because you will grieve. Make no mistake. Even if you make the right choice, even if you leap and land on solid ground, you will look back at the ruins of your old house with a pang of sorrow. You will miss the way light hit the kitchen table. You will miss the familiar creak of the floorboards. That is the price of admission to a new life. You pay for the future with the past. We are so afraid of this grief that we forget the grief of staying. There is a grief that comes from never having lived the life you were meant to live. It is quieter, slower. It doesn't hit you like a wave on the night of the big decision. It drips on you, drop by drop, year after year, until one day you wake up drowning in it. That is the grief of a life unlived. That is the regret of the choice not made. And that regret is a poison far more potent than the pain of any transition. Perhaps the courage to make the hard choice comes not from a burst of bravery, but from a shift in perspective. Perhaps it comes from realizing that the person you are right now is not a fixed statue, but a wave in the ocean. You are constantly changing, constantly dying, and being reborn with every passing second. The cells in your body are not the same as 7 years ago. The thoughts you held 10 years ago have evolved. You are already a different person than you were, you are just refusing to give that new person the throne. You are forcing a ghost to rule a living kingdom. So the hard choice is not about choosing between two external paths. It is about aligning your external reality with your internal truth. It is about looking at the king on the throne, that old identity, and recognizing that its reign is over. You don't have to kill it with hatred. You don't have to storm the throne room with a sword in vengeance. You can simply walk in, kneel before it, and thank it. Thank it for keeping you safe when you needed safety. Thank it for providing when provision was the priority. Thank it for being loyal when loyalty was the currency of survival. And then, with deepest respect and deepest sorrow, you can gently take its crown and place it on your own head. You can integrate its wisdom into your new reign. You don't destroy the old self, you honor it by becoming what it was always trying to protect you enough to become. This is the secret the frozen ones don't know. They think change is destruction. But change is succession. The old king does not have to die in agony. It can retire in peace, its legacy living on in the wiser, braver ruler that takes its place. The hard choice is not a door that slams shut on your past, it is a door that opens onto a broader hallway, where portraits of all your former selves hang on the walls, watching you with pride as you walk toward the light. And yet, knowing this, feeling this truth in your bones, does not make the moment of choice any easier. Because in that moment, standing on the precipice, the intellectual understanding of succession is drowned out by the visceral roar of survival. The old self does not want to retire. It does not want to be honored. It wants to cling to the throne with its fingernails, screaming that the ground below is lava and the sky above is falling. This is the final battle. This is where the paralysis grips hardest. Because here the stakes are highest. It is not a battle of logic versus emotion. It is a battle of two different kinds of survival, the survival of the body versus the survival of the soul. Staying in the bad job keeps the body fed. Staying in the dead relationship keeps the body from being alone. Staying in the familiar city keeps the body out of danger. The body wants to live. It is programmed for it. It doesn't care if the soul is shriveling like a dried leaf, as long as the heart keeps beating and the lungs keep breathing. The soul, however, has a different survival instinct. The soul needs to grow. It needs to expand. It needs to breathe the air of purpose and passion. It cannot survive in a cage, no matter how gilded the bars. So the hard choice is not a choice between good and bad. It is a choice between the body's survival and the soul's survival. And when those two fundamental drives are at war inside you, the result is not a simple decision. It is an earthquake. This is why we see people who have everything, money, security, love, walk away from it all. We call them crazy. We say they had a midlife crisis. We dismiss them as reckless. But perhaps they just heard the soul scream louder than the body's whimper. Perhaps they realized that physical survival in a spiritual wasteland is a fate worse than death. And perhaps those of us who judge them are just trying to drown out the sound of our own soul's whisper, the one telling us we are dying a little more each day. The dark reason you can't make the hard choice is that it forces you to listen to that whisper. It forces you to acknowledge that you have been complicit in your own slow demise. It forces you to look in the mirror and see not just who you are, but the graveyard of all the people you could have been. That is a heavy weight. It is easier to look away. Easier to scroll through your phone, pour another drink, pick a fight, bury yourself and work anything to avoid the gaze of those ghosts. They stand behind you, the ghosts of your potential, and they watch. They watch you stall. They watch you procrastinate. They watch you choose the comfort of the known over the terror of the new. And they are patient. They will wait. They will stand there silently for years, until the day you finally gather the courage to turn around and face them. And on that day, you will realize they are not ghosts. They are not the people you could have been. They are the people you still can be. They are not dead, they are just waiting to be born. But for them to be born, the old you has to be willing to die. Not the physical you, but the identity you. The one that is comfortable. The one that is safe. The one that is terrified. This is the precipice we all stand on, more often than we realize. It's not just the big, life-altering decisions that require this death. It happens in small ways, every single day. Every time you choose to speak up instead of staying silent, you kill the shy version of yourself. Every time you set a boundary instead of people-pleasing, you kill the version that needed approval to survive. Every time you try something new instead of sticking to routine, you kill the version that believed change was dangerous. Life is a constant process of dying and being reborn. The only question is whether we do it consciously, with courage, or whether we let the tyrant on the throne rule until the kingdom crumbles to dust around us. So when you find yourself frozen, unable to make that hard choice, don't ask yourself, what if I fail? That is the wrong question. The body asks that. Instead, walk into the quiet room of your house. Look at the king on the throne. Ask yourself, who am I protecting by staying the same? And then ask the harder question, who am I hurting? Because the person you are hurting the most by not making the choice is not those around you. It is not your partner, your boss, or your family. It is the future version of you, the one standing in the garden outside the castle walls, waiting for you to open the gate. That version of you is real. They feel the sun on their skin. They breathe free air. And they are waiting. They have been waiting a long time. The question is not whether you have the strength to make the choice. You do. The question is whether you have the heart to let the person you are die, so the person you are meant to become can finally live. There is a reason we speak of making up our mind as if it were a creative act, as if we are constructing something from raw materials. But the truth is far more geological. The mind is not made, it is revealed. It is a landscape that has been forming for decades, shaped by underground rivers of memory and tectonic shifts of trauma. And when a hard choice presents itself, it acts like a seismic force, cracking the surface wide open to show us what has always been there, lurking beneath the topsoil of our daily consciousness. We think we are paralyzed by the future, by the fear of what comes next. But if you sit quietly enough in that paralysis, if you stop fighting it for a moment, you will realize that the chains holding you in place are not made of future anxiety. They are forged from the past. They are rusted iron links connected to moments you have forgotten, wounds you bandaged but never let heal, and loyalties you swore to people, including your younger self, that you have long since outgrown. To move forward, you must understand the archaeology of your own hesitation. You must dig. Imagine a child. This child is young, perhaps 6 or 7 years old. They are standing in a room, and something has gone wrong. Maybe they broke a vase. Maybe they said something they shouldn't have. Maybe they simply expressed a need that was inconvenient. And the adult in the room, a parent, a teacher, a guardian, reacts. The reaction is not physically violent, perhaps, but it is sharp. It is a look of disappointment that cuts deeper than any knife. It is a withdrawal of love, a cold silence that fills the room like water. The child stands there, confused, terrified. They don't understand the complexity of the adult's stress or their own unhealed wounds. They only understand one thing: I am not safe when I am myself. They understand that to be loved, to be accepted, to survive in this emotional environment, they must become someone else. They must become quiet. They must become agreeable. They must become small. They must become the person who does not make waves. This moment, this seemingly insignificant moment, is a burial. The child buries a part of themselves alive. They lower the coffin of their authentic desire into the ground, pat down the earth, and plant a flag that reads safe. And they walk away, leaving that part of themselves to suffocate in the dark. Years pass. The child grows up. They become an adult with a job and a partner and a life. They think the child is gone, a distant memory, a photograph in an album. But that child is not gone. That child is still in the ground. And that child is the one pulling the strings when you stand at the crossroads of a hard choice. Because the hard choice always requires you to be the person that child was forbidden from being. The hard choice to ask for a raise requires you to be the person who makes waves. The hard choice to end a friendship requires you to be the person who disappoints someone. The hard choice to pursue a creative passion requires you to be the person who risks looking foolish, who risks the withdrawal of approval. And the moment you even think about being that person, the buried child stirs in their grave. They feel the pressure of your foot above them, and they panic. They reach up with tiny, desperate hands and grab your ankles. They whisper, no. Don't. Remember what happened last time? Remember the silence? Remember the look in their eyes? Stay small. Stay quiet. Stay safe, can you listen? Because that child's voice is the oldest voice you know. It is the voice of survival. It is the voice that kept you alive when you were powerless. How can you ignore it? How can you trample on the grave of the child who saved you? You cannot make the hard choice because you are still trying to protect that child. You are still trying to earn the love that was withdrawn all those years ago. You are still trying to prove to the ghosts of your past that you are worthy of safety. And as long as you fight that ancient war, you cannot fight the present one. You are a general leading troops in a battle that ended decades ago, unaware that the enemy left the field long ago. The only enemy now is the loyalty you feel to a survival strategy that no longer serves you. This loyalty is the most invisible chain of all. We are so quick to judge ourselves for cowardice, but we never consider that our so-called cowardice might actually be the deepest form of fidelity. You are not weak for staying in the job you hate, you are fiercely loyal to the version of yourself that needed security to survive your 20s. You are not a coward for staying in the relationship that dims your light, you are heroically loyal to the part of you that once believed love was scarce and had to be clung to at any cost. The problem is not the loyalty. Loyalty is a beautiful thing. The problem is the object of your loyalty. You have pledged allegiance to a ghost. You have sworn an oath to protect a version of yourself that no longer exists, and in doing so, you are sacrificing the version of yourself that is begging to be born. There is a reason the hardest choices often feel like a betrayal. Because they are a betrayal. They betray the old contract you signed with the world when you were too young to know better. They betray the promises you made to yourself in the dark, promises that you would never be vulnerable again, that you would never risk rejection again, that you would never put yourself in a position where you could feel that childhood terror again. To make the hard choice, you have to break those promises. You have to look at that buried child and say, I know you are scared. I know you are hurting. But I am not leaving you behind. I am digging you up. I am letting you out. And I am taking you with me into the sunlight, even if it burns at first. This is the deeper work. This is why therapy exists, why we have late-night conversations with friends, why we write in journals, why we walk alone in the woods. We are trying to find the graves. We are trying to locate the places where we buried ourselves alive. And the hard choice is the divining rod that points us directly to them. The choice itself is not the point. The point is what the choice reveals. When you feel the paralysis, don't fight it. Don't try to muscle through with sheer willpower. Instead, get quiet. Follow the fear back to its source. Ask yourself, when was the first time I felt this exact feeling? When was the first time I learned that being myself was dangerous? And if you sit with that question long enough, if you are brave enough to let the answer rise, you will meet them. You will meet the child in the ground. And when you meet them, you will realize something that changes everything. You will realize they are not a ghost. They are not a tyrant. They are not an enemy. They are just a child. A terrified, confused, innocent child who has been waiting in the dark for someone to come and tell them it's safe to come out now. They have been waiting for you. All this time, you thought you were running from the future. But you were actually running from the past. You were running from the responsibility of going back to that grave, opening the coffin, and extending your hand. This is the moment the hard choice becomes possible. Not when you have gathered enough courage to face the unknown, but when you have gathered enough compassion to face the known. When you have looked at the source of your fear and realized it is not a monster, but a wound. Wounds can be healed. Monsters have to be slain. The old narrative told you that you had to kill your old self. But the deeper truth is that your old self was never the enemy. Your old self was just a child who got trapped in a bad situation and did the best they could with the tools they had. That child deserves your gratitude, not your blade. That child deserves to be told, thank you for keeping us safe. You did a good job. But you can rest now. I'm driving the car. When that shift happens inside you, the external choice becomes almost anticlimactic. The fear doesn't disappear entirely, but it loses its authority. It goes from being a king issuing decrees to being an advisor offering an opinion. You can hear its warning, nod respectfully, and then do what you need to do anyway. The job is quit. The relationship is ended. The city is left. The business is started. And you look back and wonder why it took you so long. But you know why. It took you so long because you weren't just making a decision, you were conducting a rescue mission. You were going back in time to save someone you forgot you loved. This is the hidden architecture of every great transformation. Read the biographies of people who made impossible choices, who left everything behind to chase a vision, who stood against insurmountable odds. You will find, if you read closely enough, that they all had a moment of reckoning with their own buried child. They all had a moment where they realized the fear holding them back was not their own adult fear, but a relic. Nelson Mandela walked out of prison after 27 years not with bitterness, but with a vision of reconciliation. How do you do that? How do you sit with that much suffering and not let it turn you to stone? You do it by understanding that the child who was imprisoned, the child who was stripped of his youth, is not the same as the man who walks free. You honor that child's suffering by building a world where no other child has to suffer that way. You don't stay trapped with him. You carry him forward. The hard choice, then, is not a leap into the void. It is a return to solid ground. It is the recognition that the ground beneath your feet has always been solid, you just couldn't feel it because you were standing on the grave of your own history. Once you fill in that grave, once you raise the dead and welcome them home, you can stand firm. And from that firm ground, the path forward reveals itself not as a terrifying unknown, but as the next logical step in a journey you have been on your entire life. This is the forgiveness that precedes every great act of courage. Not forgiveness of others, but forgiveness of self. Forgiveness for staying small when you could have been big. Forgiveness for being silent when you could have spoken. Forgiveness for protecting a child who didn't need protecting anymore. And in that forgiveness, the paralysis breaks. Not because the choice gets easier, but because you finally understand who you are making it for. You are making it for everyone you have ever been. You are making it for the child in the ground, for the adult standing at the crossroads, and for the elder you will one day become, looking back on this moment with pride instead of regret. So move. Not because you are brave, but because you are whole. Not because the future is certain, but because the past is healed. The road ahead is still dark, still unknown. But for the first time, you are not walking it alone. You are walking it with everyone you have ever been. And together, there is nowhere you cannot go.